Good afternoon, and welcome to the IEP Toolkit. I'm Lisa Kirsch Satawa with Kirsch Satawa Law Group in Blue Hills, Michigan, and it is my pleasure today to talk to you about some of the challenges, well, continue talking to you about some of the challenges that are meeting our students that are not native English speakers. What we're talking about is students who are English language learners or ELLs. Yesterday, we talked about um, the challenges that ELL students face and how the law requires for ELL issues to be ruled out before any disability or learning issue or the need for an IEP, which includes uh, other accommodations for other supports based on a disability are considered. We also talked about, and this was all in yesterday's broadcast, if any of you want to go back and listen to it, but we talked a lot about students' rights who English is not their first language and what parents need to know and what questions to ask and how to deal with that challenge on behalf of your child. So the takeaways from yesterday is basically that English language learners experience learning and thinking differences at the same rate as other students. And when you are having an evaluation for a learning disability for your child who is an English language learner, it is best for the testing for that evaluation to be done in their native language. If it's only done in English, then it may be confused as a learning disability when actually it's an English proficiency issue. So very, very important distinction there. And um, and just kind of a follow up, it may seem kind of obvious, but um, having to learn a second language does not cause learning and thinking differences between kids. So those were the big takeaways from yesterday. And again, research shows that bilingual children, bilingual education, those students are the most successful academically. So today we are going to pivot a little bit. And, like everything, when we're talking about education, there's a million acronyms and a million abbreviations, and we have the ABCs of special ed, which we've talked about before. And so today, just like everything else in academia, there are special terms that are related to English language learners. And so we're going to start today by just becoming familiar with those terms. And then we'll talk about the difference in IEPs for English language learners. And then finally, the checklist for what you need the school to know about your English language learner in order for it to be effective. One thing I want to point out before we really dive in, though, is that you need to remember that even if your child speaks perfect English, and they're attending school, if you speak a different language in your house other than English, whether it's for 5 minutes or all the time, your child is eligible for English language learner services and should get them, because it will take probably till around age 7 or 8 for your child to catch up to a student as far as their English language proficiency who is speaking English at home as well as speaking English at school. And so it's really important to understand that. And that your child is an English language learner if there's any other language spoken at home other than English. So basically, to start out today, as I said, we're going to learn the terminology that's associated with English language learners, and um, and the goal is for your child to not only be conversational in English, but also to understand academic English and what happens in the classroom, which is very, very different. Also for your child to write in English. Every child is required in the United States to learn how to read, write, do math, um, and other skills. So, and we're going to talk about when your child will need special supports. And the first term that we're going to learn, however, because it's the most important, is what is language proficiency. Language proficiency means that a child has enough language skills to read, listen, write, and communicate well. And an English language learner is anyone who doesn't speak English fluently and who is still learning English. So if your child's an ELL or an English language learner, the school must help your child become literate in English. Um, and if you think there's also difficulties with learning or thinking, then that's evaluated next, and you can get extra support for those issues too. Okay, so first and foremost, academic English. What is academic English? It's the ability needed to participate in school. It's also sometimes called CALP, CALP, which is the cognitive academic language proficiency. The next one is accommodations. We've talked about accommodations for all kinds of disabilities over the past couple of months. But the most important thing to remember is that accommodations are used to level the playing field, and it's to help students who are struggling overcome, or not overcome, but work around their difficulties. The next thing is BICS, BICS. BICS stands for Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills, and this is the ability to speak basic English. It's sometimes called survival English or playground English or slang, but that's what BICS is. Biliteracy means being able to speak and understand written material in both English and another language. Dual language program or dual immersion. It's designed to make all students in the class literate in two languages. It's also called two-way immersion or two-way bilingual education. And we talked a bit about that yesterday and the benefits of that. There's been a lot of research on that. So we talked about that yesterday. We already talked about what an ELL or an English language learner is, but we did not talk about that a student cannot be categorized as an ELL until they're age 5, until they are about to enter kindergarten. You can certainly start ELL services and developing their English proficiency much younger than that, but formally in the school setting, it's age 5 or older who are learning English as a second language. Now, a lot of people confuse ELL with ESL. ELL refers to the student. ESL refers to the approach for students who are not native English speakers and are mainly taught in English. It focuses on language skills rather than content. So it's very different than just being in a regular classroom that presumes that you can speak and understand not only street English or playground English, but also academic English. The ESL can be done in the classroom or as a pull-out service. Obviously, there's push-in services and pull-out services, and those definitions are coming in here when we get to the P's, but a pull-out is when the child is physically removed from their classroom and goes to a different classroom with other students who are learning English as a second language, or they may be pulled out to be in a small group. Up to 5 students is the norm, or they may have some one-on-one, depending on where their proficiency is at the time that the IEP is written. The push-in services are when an ESL teacher or trained ESL professional are actually in the regular classroom with the child and able to do some immersion type experiences in learning in that setting. Exit criteria are the guidelines for determining when English language learners are, um, are proficient enough or literate enough in English to end the special language services. Language minority is a student from a home where a language other than English is spoken, and it doesn't refer to how well the actual student speaks or if they understand English or don't understand English. It merely is any student from a home where language other than English is spoken, and that's called a language minority. We've talked a little bit about language proficiency. The official definition of that is that it refers to whether or not a student has enough language skills to read, listen, write, and communicate well in English. Newcomer programs help new immigrants learn English and get accustomed to the United States. They're usually in middle school or high school where you see these programs, and it's usually students who had limited schooling in their home country. Primary language is the language that students who speak two or more language are most fluent in or prefer to use. We just talked about what pull out and push in are. So I'm going to skip those. Standard English is formal English writing and speaking. It's the most widely accepted and understood form of English in the United States. And that is what all of our upper level English writing research types of classes are expecting in the curriculum. Transitional bilingual education provides or uses two languages to provide instruction. So it's the use of English is gradually increased until it's the only language used. So an example of that is if you have a child who speaks very little English but speaks fluent Spanish. The curriculum would start out by being taught mostly in Spanish with incorporating English. And then as time went on, it would become more English and less Spanish. And so the scales are tipping. That's called a transitional bilingual education. So those are the terms that anyone who's involved in the ELL world needs to know. The takeaways would be that Pull Out ESL is a program in which students are pulled out of the classroom, and Push In ESL is when the teacher comes to the class. And that there are all kinds of newcomer programs for immigrant children to learn English and adults also to learn English across the United States. So now let's transition a little bit into are IEPs different for ELL students? And of course they are. One of the primary things that we deal with is that sometimes you have children who have some verbal English skills, but they have reading issues. Um, and sometimes this sort of lapse in language is confused with reading issues, and it really is just an English proficiency issue. So that's why yesterday when we spoke about the testing and evaluations and how those exercises need to be done to ascertain if it's an English proficiency issue or it's actually a learning and thinking issue. So that's really important. You may want to go back and listen to yesterday if you missed it. As you all know, IEPs are individual. So with as is any other issue that is an obstacle or a threat to learning, English language learners have to have uh, services provided to increase their proficiency in English. And so these must be individualized, they must be based on the child's unique challenges, and they should be They should be. They're not always included in an IEP. Um, English as a second language, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, is the service that is provided to teach English. Um, the IEP should include how much time, whether it's hours or minutes, whether it's per day, per week, or per month, the child will spend receiving English as a second language services. It should detail how much of the ESL help will be in small groups, how much of it will be push in, how much of it will be pull out, and if it will include a testing component, if it will include a reading component. Basically, will it follow the classroom syllabus or 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 lesson plans day by day, week by week? Will it lag behind? What is the communication going to be between the ESL teacher and the primary teacher? And of course, we're talking about young kids here. So it's not like they're in a high school and they have 32 different classes that they're going back and forth from. So let's remember, this is mostly, we're dealing with young children. There's also the possibility that special ed can be provided in one or two languages, and the IEP has to make clear which supports and services will be provided in English and which ones will be provided in the child's native language. There and also um, when you're dealing with two languages and one that the child knows better than the other, it's also important to talk about tests. And if the test is being given in English, is the child going to get extra time? Are the instructions going to be in their native language? Is someone going to review the instructions with them to make sure they understand them if they're in English? Um, or are there going to be other types of tests, um, such as reading comprehension, that are just given in the native language? Extended testing time, very, very common in English language learners, and that's something that should not be overlooked. Um, so, lastly, today, we are going to talk about the 10 things that your English language learner school must know in order for your child to be successful. And so this is kind of the key information. So we've talked about over and over again how things need to be in writing. And if they're not in writing, they didn't happen. And or they're not going to happen, or people can just say they've never even heard that before. You're speaking, spaghetti goulash, who knows? Anyway, so in writing, it is strongly suggested that this is in your log, journal, and calendar when this information is communicated and when you get the answers and what the answers are. Basically, the school needs to know. In the same way, if any of you have ever prepared like a resume or a bio for your child to include with their college application, that's essentially what you're going to do for your English language learner. And you want to make sure that the school is aware. And again, I'm an overkill person, so I think you should give every individual teacher their own copy, their own information packet, and not rely on the school to get it through the pipeline to who really needs it, because they have many, many, many students to accommodate, obviously. And so just make an extra copy, bring it to conferences, bring it to the first meeting, curriculum night, whatever it is, and just get it out there from the get-go that this is who your child is. So what language does your child speak at home? Is that your child's native language? Sometimes the native language could be one thing. Parents have two different native languages. So don't just assume that it's one. It's all right for it to be more than one. It's all right for it to have an English component as well. And you want to let the school or the teachers or educators know, how have you encouraged your child's reading and writing in the native language? At what age did your child begin to speak in their first language? At what age did your child begin learning English? What schools did your child attend in the past? What kind of English language instruction did they get in the past? Um, if you have copies of school records, or the prior curriculum, of attendance, performance notes, progress notes, really helpful, since I know that you all are organized and have binders now and are really prepared for every time you have to talk to school. So you're going to have all these things and you're going to share them. Does your child have any health problems that could affect learning? Has there been a head injury, a car accident, vision or hearing problems, emotional trauma? Is the family going through a change, whether it's an illness or a divorce or a new marriage or a separation? Um, is there now an unrelated caregiver living in the home? A lot of families now, because of COVID and both parents working at home or one at home and one in an office, have had to bring in outside supports to help their children participate actively and appropriately in school, no matter what that school looks like, if it's online or it's brick and mortar. So that's another thing to consider. Um, and another thing to consider is there a history of learning and thinking differences in your family? Does anyone else in the family have any sort of learning disability, processing uh, issue, attention issue, and and so that's also important for them to know. And then, are there any challenges that make it difficult for your child to get their work done at home or to get difficult to get to school, or to attend school regularly? And that may be a health issue by someone else in your family, a health issue of your child. It may be that the family doesn't have a car, doesn't have a computer for or a tablet. It could be a health condition of a parent. It could be work a conflict. So there's all kinds of challenges that come into play that aren't just the challenge of not being um, English as your first language. Does your child understand directions or have difficulty understanding directions in their native language? And then you want to set up a regular schedule with the teacher, not just the authorized one time per semester conference, but maybe every 2 weeks you would like the teacher to communicate with you. And maybe you're the one who initiates that communication and the teacher just has to reply and tell you. But you really want to make sure that the teacher is seeing progress and that the goals are being met, and you want to monitor this closely because it is a juggling act on which challenges in school are because of the English proficiency or lack thereof, and which issues are more related to being a different thinker, a different learner. So those are, the top 10 that they say of things that you should let the school know. Being transparent is always the best policy. Um, ask what's happening at school. Ask how they're going to approach certain challenges. Do the same thing at home. If you have things that are working at home, that you're able to expand vocabulary and expand not just playground English, but academic English, share that with the educators. Let them know it works. Let them know it doesn't work. Let them know what absolutely drives you crazy about when you're trying to do schoolwork with your child. And, really, you were your child's first teacher. You started teaching them from the minute they had to learn how to say mama. So, or maybe even before. um, so it's really, really important that you are an active participant and you are your child's best advocate because you were their first advocate. Do not uh, be deferential to the educators because you are part of the team and you are the one who sees your child all day, every day, lately more than usual, and can really report what is going on with your child. So don't just let the educators or the members of the team other than you tell you how your child is doing. Especially right now, they have no idea how your child's doing. Your child has been home or distance learning for a period of time, and it's very uncertain as to what it's going to look like once school starts. Which brings me to my new latest and greatest. I, as you all know, and this is the draft, but it will be coming out this week. This is the IEP Toolkit, Plan, Prepare, and Advocate. Advocate. It is my first ebook. I'm really psyched about it. And the other thing that will be coming out is a back to school update, something that you can write for all of your child's teachers to let them know of what the experience with distance learning was, what the strengths and challenges were, and any recent events that may affect their transition back into more traditional learning, if there is one. Um, the other thing is that a lot of the learning in in the spring was optional, and now it's going to be mandatory. So it's even more important, especially with children who are different learners, that we have this baseline data. We know we are able to communicate as parents to the educators where our children are now, so that formulating the next IEP, the one for 2021, has good data in it. The evaluations needed are performed, and there are really specific, measurable goals that we can determine the progress and go forward to make our children all successful. So, with that, I am going to say goodbye for today. Again, I'm Lisa Kirsch Satawa. Reach out to me with any of your questions, either by email or by messenger or by phone. And I look forward to showing you a different approach to your different learners. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.